welcome to the ThinkMHK podcast presented by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. On this podcast, you will hear about a variety of local matters pertaining to the business community. You also hear from local business owners to hear their story and gain valuable business insights. Thanks for tuning in today. My co-host for this segment is Charlotte Meisenheimer. Hey, Charlotte, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Jason?
I'm great. We have a great guest with us for this segment and somebody you know very well because he is the current chair, although he's getting close to the end, the current chair of the membership committee, Jared Willick with High Tech Interiors. Hey, Jared.
How's everything going?
I think all right. Are you looking forward to the end of that term, or are you a little melancholy now?
I feel like we're like a half a year into it because COVID took all the rest of it out.
You did.
Being in Zoom meetings is one thing. I like meeting in person as much as possible, but it's worked out. It's worked out great.
Yep, we would agree with you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're a Manhattan kid, but tell us a little about yourself and your business.
Work at High Tech Interiors. Turned 30. Been in business for 30 years this year in September. My father founded the business in 1991, and I've been there all but a year and a half. And so it's kind of weird being 45 saying you've worked for the same business for almost 30 years, and I've probably got another 15 in me. So it's going to be a fun ride for sure.
So let's talk for a minute about the 1.5. What'd you do for the 1.5 years you weren't at High Tech?
I actually worked for the competition, Midwest Drywall out of Wichita.
Okay.
So good experience. When I went to work there, the guy that hired me said, I know you're not going to stick around here for a very long time, but we'd love to have you. So, and he was right, and went back to work with my dad. We weren't getting along in the office so great to each other, so I came back to work out in the field, but that didn't last very long either, so I went back up in the office in about 6 months after coming back.
Well, those of us with sons understand, and dads, I guess, I understand how that might be a challenge. So congratulations on figuring that out.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
So talk about your role as the chair of the membership committee.
The role of the membership committee, I feel like it's gaining some legs. I feel like it was kind of probably a little bit of a lost committee for a little while, or a committee of one, which was Charlotte. And trying to get the committee back involved and trying to do some things, make phone calls prior to, people upset of maybe possibly getting out of the chamber, and just trying to engage more with the actual membership. That was kind of a goal of mine, but I felt like while you're making strides, you're just now starting to get back in person and doing some of those things. So it's a little tough. But so I feel like the membership committee's starting, to figure out the direction that they need to head to actually, prop up the actual membership, do what is necessary to do that. Also, with doing our membership drive, we have a bunch of new members. So now we got to figure out, I guess it's on the membership committee to figure out how we're going to keep them at the chamber.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because you did chair the membership drive, and it was something that we did this fall, and ended up over the 3-day period with 105 new members. And so talk about that experience and what that was like. I thought, just from my perspective, I was real excited how many people we got engaged in that process.
It was great. I was not. I was actually a co-chair, but with Larry. But I really, honestly, had no idea that was what I was doing. Charlotte calls me and she goes, "Hey, we're doing a membership drive, and because you are the chair of the membership committee, you are co-chairing." And I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't really didn't realize that's what I signed up for." It was great though, like great experience. Everybody gets busy and everybody gets that way. I feel like I probably failed some of my drivers a little bit, or my crew chiefs a little bit, by not following up as much as I should have. But no, very pleased in the fact that we haven't had one in so long. And, 105 is better than, trying to continue to do it, I say pro bono, through the chamber. there's a handful of you guys and you don't have all the time in the world to do it. So it was a great experience though.
Yeah.
Absolutely great.
Of course, it's a year's worth of new members that we got in 3 days, and the most members, the organization ended with the most members that we've had in 20 years and 21 years. So congratulations to you, and thank you for your help on that. So your dad, Fred, was a former chair of the chamber and obviously has been involved for a number of years. What made you decide to get engaged in the chamber as well?
Basically kind of passing of the torch. My dad was very, very, what I want to say. I'll just say it, passionate about the fact that you give back to the community. If you're a business in the community, you give back. And as a business owner, one of the best ways that I say, you can give through philanthropy and to all kinds of organizations in the community. I get asked to be on a lot of boards around the community. But the chamber's the one that I feel champions, they're the only one that's very vocal about the business side of things. And I'm huge into the advocacy part. So they're the ones fighting to keep, having business be easy to do in Manhattan, Kansas. Try to keep regulations down, try to steer commission where they need to go, whether it be county or city, just to try to make things better for the business community as a whole.
And continue to grow as a community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit more about your experiences as a chamber member.
When I first got started, I really honestly thought the only thing we did at the chamber was business after hours.
I'd like to think you were the only member that ever thought that, but that's not true. So
Yeah.
Continue. Tell us more, Jared.
Given the opportunity to go to those, I went to a lot of them, just when I was single and just married, went to a lot of those. But, now having kids and things like that, I don't get to do those so much. But my experiences of being there is just the networking of people and not realizing how, I'll say, tight-knit the business community in Manhattan is. There's still, the pocket full of groups that do their things and do everything. But as an overall arching goal, I've made phone calls to business folks that I probably ordinarily wouldn't have, for coaching, for ideas, for, you've experienced this in your business. How did it go? We've been through a lot of that stuff ourselves, but it's always good to get, another perspective on it. So that for me is one of the best experiences I've had as far as the chamber is, and I'll call it mentoring, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. But, it's not out there mentoring. It's me searching for it. But the fact that the people on the receiving end of that ask were so generous with their time. I can't even explain that. So it's been great.
That's awesome. So you are our first chair as the membership committee. It's at one of the newer committees that was started just recently in the past 2 years. So how did you land on that spot, and what made you decide to say yes to that ask?
Actually, before that was done, I think Charlotte, we were at lunch. I was at lunch with you and somebody. There was a couple other people there, and I finally got to the point I needed to get involved at the chamber. Going to events and doing things like that isn't necessarily getting involved. So actually, I asked Charlotte, I'm like, hey, I'm ready to do something, getting more involved or whatever. And she goes, well, we have this thing coming up. And I said, okay. And she told me a little more about it. And I'm not scared to talk to anybody. So maybe that's what made it an easy fit, I guess. But I was excited at the challenge. It's something brand new the chamber's trying to get off the ground, and COVID kind of put a little swing on that. So I know you're kind of out of sorts as far as switching people over and everything as far as chairs and things, but it was I was excited. It was something fun. But now that I've done that, like, it makes me think of the other committees that the chamber has, to be able to see if I can get in on one of those and sit on one of those.
Well, and you're on the Economic Development Committee as well.
Right.
So, yeah. So,
like, where you can, I just feel you just get involved where you think you feel you can make an impact at the chamber. That's one of the biggest things I think you can take as far as, number one, being a member. You can go to the events and everything and do all the networking, but the worth of being there and the more you get out of it, if you get involved, I mean, it moves mountains for you, for sure.
So why is the chamber important to the quote unquote average business owner?
I'm going to say, I don't think the average business owner realizes how much advocacy happens for them from a chamber. And that's, I mean, I'll take Manhattan out of it, or even the Kansas Chamber, or anything that's pro-business is going to go fight for business regardless. Some of those things, I mean, on a specific business may hurt or be better. But overall, they're literally the only organization that fights for business. So whether it's at, our local level here, whether it's at, our local chamber here takes care of 2 counties and a city, which is huge. And then we have partners at local communities around here, and they're super involved with that stuff. But, there's ties when you have to go to Washington, D.C. to get things done as a chamber for Manhattan, Kansas. I mean, they're fighting for what is good for business in Manhattan, Kansas. So I think that's the thing that I would say that the average business owner is kind of not in tune with what the chamber actually does for them.
So as part of being the chair of the membership committee, you also were selected to be on the board and represent the membership committee on the board. What was that experience like in terms of being a board member for the chamber?
Number one, you don't realize how big the board is. I mean, you knew it was a sizable group, but when you get there, and then, but number two, kind of my takeaway is although I can only think of like 2 or 3 things, but how passionate the people are that are on that board. I mean, every board's going to have the ones that are there, and you kind of don't hear from them, and I would like to say there's probably a couple of times I got a little passionate about a couple of things, but it just seems like whatever issue there is, there's somebody. Right now it's the building committee, and our board chair right now is passionate about it. And so it's just, I don't know, for me, it's refreshing to see that, there's people still, passionate about Manhattan and what Manhattan can do and where we can go. And, so that was a huge takeaway. I mean, it's power by committee, there's gotta be more than one. But just, you knew people had their niches, but I mean, just, you got to feel some of the passion in the room. And that was just kind of cool, because most boards I'm on are, power by committee. Hey, how do you guys feel about this? Oh yeah, we like that. Okay, well, that's what we'll do now. And we had some good discussions. I was surprised by that.
It's an interesting dynamic. We have 32 board members,
Yep.
and obviously most of our board members, if not all, are executives with their companies, and so they're very, as you say, passionate, and they're very opinionated about how they think things should be. And then we have another, 12 to 14 ex officio members who are either elected officials or the top person at a public agency, and they obviously have their views on things too. So it does make for some lively debate, and we've tried as a staff to bring more issues to the board to discuss as well. And so we do appreciate your candor and your engagement in that dialogue. But Jared, we appreciate your leadership for us over the last couple of years, and everything you've done to help us through this process specifically, and with the membership drive, because that was such a huge undertaking, and we needed to have really credible and strong people leading that, and so you were natural to do that for us. But Jared, thank you for being with us today on the ThinkMHK podcast, and we look forward to having you engaged with us for many years to come.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The ThinkMHK podcast is brought to you by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. Don't forget to subscribe and like the ThinkMHK podcast on your preferred podcast provider, and you will never risk missing an episode. If you enjoyed our show, please give us a 5-star rating and leave a review. To find out more about today's topic or other chamber activities, please go to manhattan.org. And now back to today's show. Welcome back to the ThinkMHK podcast. My co-host for this segment is Darren Solden. Hey, Darren.
Hey, Jason. Great to be here today.
Our member spotlight is Manko Windows, and with us today, representing Manko Windows, is our good friend Brett Jones. Brett, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Brett, talk a little about Manko Windows. When was it formed, and how have you guys grown over the years?
Manko was started in 1989. Started with an aluminum window idea that had been developed shortly before then, and ultimately trying to provide aluminum windows to a commercial market that needed a product in a timely fashion, a high-quality product. So ultimately, I started with 2 individuals in the first month, and by the end of the year, it was 10 full-time individuals at Manko by the end of 1989. The 3 owners are Gary, Joe, and Steve Jones. Shortly after 1989, the aluminum windows had obviously began to take off. Certainly, there was a market for the product, and complementary products began being developed in the early 90s to include storefront products, entrance door products, curtain wall products, and then shortly after, some glazing products to go into those aluminum windows. So Manko then expanded west to Denver, Colorado, and started a branch in Denver in 1996. Primarily, Denver's market for Manko was producing aluminum windows as well as providing aluminum storefront and doors in that market. Back to Manhattan for a little bit, as far as Manko began to continue to really grow on the glass side of things, providing insulated units to projects, providing single lights of glass to really for interior, exterior purposes as well. And that certainly changed over time as the market grew and energy codes began to really become more stringent. In 2012, Manko purchased a facility up in Des Moines, Iowa, and rebranded under Manko Windows up there, who primarily has covered the 4 or 5 state region up there for glazing products, but also provides the same aluminum products that Manhattan provides. Manko is a manufacturer and fabricator of glass and glazing aluminum systems, as I mentioned. The majority of our products are sold on the exterior or intended for use on the exterior of commercial buildings, whether it's a storefront, the curtain wall, windows, doors, the glass. Manko provides products to meet really any building's demand and really any different market. We provide products to all the way to Wisconsin to down to Houston, Texas, and those obviously present different challenges, whether it's thermal performance or whatever it may be. We also provide interior systems for both residential and commercial market, as well as really an initiative of growing the interior shower door market. We deliver products to 16 states weekly through our 3 facilities, and have sales reps that cover 28 states throughout the Midwest, primarily from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. In the Manhattan area, you'll see our trucks driving around. We install our own product here in the Manhattan area and a small surrounding radius. We do not install our products outside of the Manhattan area. We provide our products to probably over 1,000 glazing contractors that are in our customer base who would then install our products. In Junction City, we also produce and manufacture vinyl windows and provide that more for the residential market. I know we did a job down in Texas here that finished up 2 years ago and had 3,000 windows on it, and it was just one job. So we do jobs from 1 window to 3,000 windows.
Wow, that sounds like a lot. So you mentioned earlier about the ownership. I don't believe it's coincidental that all their last names are Jones. So Manko is a family-owned business, correct?
Yes.
And of course your name is Jones as well, and so you've come on as part of that family-owned business. So what's your role at Manko?
I started with Manko full-time as a sales rep out in Colorado. I covered 5 states as an outside sales representative for about 4 years, and then moved back here about 4.5 years ago. My wife and I decided to move back and Primarily, I work in the marketing department at Manko, as well as I'm still in sales as the kind of the Western Kansas sales representative. But I would say most of my role is different than those two job categories. I do a little bit of everything at Manko, I guess you could say.
So what made your family decide to take the risk to start a business in Manhattan?
Prior to starting the business in 1989, Joe, my grandfather, Steve, my uncle, and my father, Gary, were working at Harding Glass, who was a large Midwest glazing contractor. They had a location here in Manhattan, and the three of them were based in Manhattan and had lived here for a number of years. And Steve and Gary had grown up here, so ultimately, to my knowledge, had decided to start the business here.
So, Brett, what's made Manko successful for so long? Because obviously there's been a strong history, not just of the business in Manhattan, but significant business growth across the country.
Yeah, it certainly has grown from a couple employees to now over 500 employees within the organization. I would say three things. First, the people at Manko. We have a lot of great employees that have a lot of tenure that's really helped Manko be successful throughout the years. Like many other industries, you learn through experience and through lessons learned, and we've been lucky enough to have a lot of tenure and a lot of good individuals on staff for a long time to be able to help us with that. Secondly, I would say our relationship with customers has been a strong key to our success. We spend a lot of time and effort getting to know our customers and their business, what their passion is, along with the individuals that work at that business. We strongly believe that strong customer relationships and the success of our customers certainly will provide an opportunity for us to be successful as well. And lastly, I would say we don't ever seem to be 100% content. We're always looking for better processes, better efficiencies, new equipment, and then certainly developing better products, more high efficient products to meet market demands. Kind of from the beginning and still today, Manko's passion has been providing customers with a quality product and certainly exceptional customer service. And then also by many, Manko's considered throughout the United States as one of the leaders in developing new fenestration products to meet the demands of not only today but tomorrow.
So you mentioned all over the United States. Where would we find Manko window systems installed in buildings?
Primarily here in the Midwest, within the 28 states that we are in yearly, I would say, and certainly the 16 states that we're in every single week. We have worked on projects as in the United States as far as Arizona, California, New York, South Carolina, but primarily within those the Midwest region. I've also understood that we've done projects over in China, Diego Garcia, Guam, to name a few places as well. Our customers have primarily taken our products to those areas.
And you mentioned earlier when we were talking, you had a project just recently in Texas where you had over 3,000 windows installed on that facility. Is that one of the larger ones, and is that something you all do on a regular basis?
That's certainly one of the larger ones.
Yeah. So I know through the last few months that we've had challenges in the supply chain. Has that impacted the window industry as well?
Yes, and primarily supply chain has become more of a challenge in the last 2 to 3 months. Early on in the pandemic, the supply chain was not as much of a challenge. Certainly, the labor was a challenge from our vendors all the way to us, whether it was quarantining or things like that caused disruptions in the supply chain. But we're seeing our biggest impact of supply chain of things that we're used to getting in 2 or 3 weeks from vendors to getting 6-month lead times on. Things like that have become very challenging. So,
and some people might not realize, I had the opportunity to see one of your presentations on one of your new systems. So technology is very important in the window industry. So for instance, you have a product now that you can install and it's clear glass, and you flip a button and it basically makes it where you can't see through the glass anymore. Do you all do a lot of that research internally? Do you work with a vendor for that? How do you develop new products like that?
I'd say that particular product, it's actually a film that is purchased out of a company from Israel, and they provide the technology for it, and then we from there fabricate it, cut it down, I guess kind of put the electricity to it, to the particular product. A lot of our, though that one is maybe a little bit different, but it is a really interesting and product in high demand, certainly for conference rooms and things like that. But a lot of our R&D is done in-house. We've got an engineer on staff that does a lot of our R&D, and certainly Gary is very involved with that as well. So he spends a lot of his time doing that.
And obviously you mentioned it earlier, but weather certainly impacts what kind of product that you're selling, depending on what part of the country you're selling in. Do you have to account for all kinds of weather, whether it's hurricanes or tornadoes or cold weather or hot weather? Is that something that you all factor into all your products?
We do provide glazing or glass products for the hurricane market. We work with companies in South Texas that they're not worried about how cold it's going to be. So it's not near as important to have high thermal performance there. We work with companies in Wisconsin that all they want is 3 pieces of glass, or if they could get 4, they would want 4 to try to keep it from the cold weather from getting in and losing that heat from inside the building. So that's something that's always kind of a challenge. The energy codes over the last 6-8 years have really pushed a high thermal performance, whether you're Oklahoma all the way north to Wisconsin. It's really changed the landscape a lot. And we've got an individual on staff that spends a lot of time with NFRC, and he's kind of keeps Manko, gives us the opportunity to stay abreast as to what's coming down the line in 5 years.
And it's great that you guys are so cutting edge on that, and that R&D is being done here locally in Manhattan. So what makes Manhattan such a good place for Manko and a good place for Manko to be based from and do business in?
Well, certainly Manko started here in '89. The individuals were from here, loved Manhattan. Geographically, it makes sense for Manhattan to be here. We've got great access to major highways in all different directions, as I would say 85 to 90% of our product goes outside of Manhattan. But ultimately, I would say for Manko, the people in Manhattan who've worked for Manko and supported Manko over the years have been amazing. The Midwest, and it seems it's not just Manko's Manhattan specific, but the Midwest work ethic, in my opinion, second to none. And it's really given us a opportunity to find individuals that want to share the same passion and goals for our business as we do.
You guys have obviously, as a company, been very involved in the community, not just as an employer, but in a lot of other initiatives and different organizations. Has being a chamber member been positive for the business?
Certainly. I would say the chamber has certainly given Manko and the individuals that have been a part of the chamber through Manko many different opportunities from both our manufacturing side as well as our contract glazing side. If I was going to say maybe the biggest positive or my limited experience back here in Manhattan with Manko from my perspective is certainly the opportunities and the networking opportunities that the chamber provides, whether it's through after hours events or whatever events may be going on at the time, meeting with people that we work with daily, that we might want to work with in the future. Just building some of those relationships has certainly been a big positive for Manko.
And of course, you're serving on our board. We appreciate your service to the organization. Recently, Manko was selected as our Cornerstone winner, which is designated for lifetime achievement in business in the community. How has your family reacted to receiving that award?
I think it's definitely very much been appreciative and humbled to get the honor and the award. Kind of gives us an opportunity. I think we're always in such a fast-paced life, it seems like right now. It kind of, I think, gave them, or at least some of us, an opportunity to kind of sit back and realize some of the strides that they've made in the business, and certainly some of the successes that Manko's had over the years. So certainly it's an appreciative award and something that certainly give us an opportunity to sit back and think about.
Well, it was definitely well-deserved. And Brett, we appreciate you being with us today. So every show with our member spotlight, we have a rapid fire segment where we ask a series of questions. And so we have our 10 questions ready for you. Are you ready to answer?
I think so.
Something that people often find surprising about you.
I am a Raiders fan.
Oh, that is surprising.
I think is this going to continue, or is it?
Yeah. So no, I don't. I don't have a dog in that fight. Actually, I'm a Cowboys fan.
I don't tell people that a lot of
Yeah.
times for business reasons, but I'm a big Raiders fan. So.
But you've lived in Chiefs territory and in Broncos territory and been a Raiders fan in that.
It's been a long 30 plus years.
Yeah. So brave. That's brave.
Yeah. We'll see what kind of feedback we get on this podcast segment.
I know we may get a 1-star review from somebody, Dave. Best piece of advice you ever received?
I would say follow up and communication. Something that was, I got in this industry, I worked in it, I guess you could kind of say all my life to an extent, but I got out in sales in 2012 or 2013, I guess it was, and knew nothing about the glass business in all reality as to what our customers knew, and I definitely didn't know anything, or as much as they did, and certainly the follow-up and the communication and just being personal with them.
Good advice. What 3 words describe living in Manhattan?
Say friendly, opportunities, and for me, and I think a lot of people that move here over time, it becomes home.
Sounds like a chamber response. Good job. Good job with that. Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Chocolate.
Well, that's much less controversial than being a Raiders fan.
It is much less controversial. Favorite pet?
I would say dog. We had a few dogs growing up, and
Okay. So not any particular pet, just all your dogs.
we had a couple dogs that were with us for a while that were hunting dogs, and spent a lot of time with them outside and inside, and yeah.
Biggest lesson the pandemic taught you?
I would say from a business standpoint, preparation of what might happen in the future, especially as we're seeing with supply chain. I would say personally, not that I try to take much for granted, but I can still remember the day I was watching I think a K-State basketball game in the Big 12 tournament, and then the next day it seemed like the world was shut down. So not taking anything for granted, certainly something that I've learned.
It's a great lesson. Samsung, Apple, or other?
Apple.
Okay. Favorite meal?
Good cheeseburger. There's a lot of good places here to get 'em.
That's not controversial either.
No, but good cheeseburger followed by chocolate is excellent.
It is, and then you wonder why Brett stays so thin.
Yeah.
He is cheeseburgers and ice cream.
My wife's a dietitian.
Oh,
so-
well, there you go. So in moderation, right?
Yeah.
That's everything in moderation. Texting or talking?
Talking.
Really? Interesting. Okay.
A Renaissance man.
I would rather talk to somebody any day.
Well,
I like
it. That's good to know. Who is the first person that comes to mind when you hear the word successful business person, and why?
I would say the person I know closest would be my dad, Gary Jones. Certainly, he started the business with his brother and father as well. But I would say my dad, just working with him over the last kind of 4.5 years, seeing how he or trying to understand exactly how he thinks, looking forward and the calculated risks, and he always has a reason. It's just a matter of understanding that reason of whether it's equipment or new products or whatever it may be. It's pretty amazing to kind of see how he thinks.
Gary Jones would be a good answer for anybody. Gary's certainly somebody that we all can admire. Brett, thank you again for being with us today. We enjoyed this opportunity to learn a little more about you and Manko, and good luck moving forward.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of ThinkMHK, a podcast produced by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. If you enjoyed the ThinkMHK podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and share it out on your social media channels. Feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce.